Democrats appear to have played hardball on redistricting and actually won. A massive backfire for Trump and for MAGA. Is the great misadventure in Iran over? No. But is it becoming clearer? Well, also no. But for now, there's at least a lot less violence. The poll numbers for Trump on immigration have already tanked. Are his poll numbers in the economy next? Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who vote for progress and want to convince their friends and family members to join our majority.
All right, well, let's start with the news out of Virginia from last night. There was a statewide referenda on the question of whether the state would temporarily redistrict mid-decade. And the resolution passed narrowly, meaning that Democrats will likely net a few seats out of Virginia. Let's start with just an explanation of what's going on here from the governor herself, Governor Spanberger of Virginia.
Absolutely. And I think what's most important is that the individual voters in the Commonwealth of Virginia ultimately voted on this referendum and passed it. Really, this all began when President Trump said that he believed he was entitled to congressional seats and that the legislature at the time in Texas responded by redistricting without the input of the people to ensure that he got what he wanted. And so as we have seen efforts at redistricting in other states, Virginia created a plan that was wholly responsive to the actions of other states and temporary in nature, very clearly preserving our bipartisan redistricting commission into the future. And importantly, that had to go through our General Assembly for 2 votes before going on the ballot for a referendum for voters. And so what is important and I think different than certainly what Texas did in Virginia is that the maps that the legislature was proposing was before the people, and people very much understood that this is temporary, responsive, and they knew what they were voting for. And that when this passed, it would be because individual voters, and especially millions of Virginians, had decided to take this step. And that's why the referendum passed, because Virginians recognize the current state of where we are, want to preserve that bipartisan commission into the future, but want to take this responsive step at the moment.
Well, Jason, what's your take? How important is this?
My take is it's a really big deal, but the reason, it's a big deal for the obvious reasons, which is that the Republicans thought they were going to basically rig the elections to try and retain the House, and that is not how it's going to go. Now, everything is still going to be very gerrymandered, but it's sort of balancing itself out. So that's a big deal. But to me, the larger deal here is how, if you're listening to this show or watching this show, there is no question that at some point you have complained about Democrats nationally being weak, and that Republicans always play hardball, and Republicans understand that, wielding power matters, and that this is all really about power. It's not about fairness. And the Democrats never stand up and actually, exact any sort of punishment on Republicans for doing the wrong thing, or never use power when they have it. And this is an example of, between this and California and the other places where this has happened, this is an example where the Democrats were like, okay, you're going to do this? Well, we're going to come down twice as hard on you. And we're not going to be so precious that we, are so caught up on the norms of, our party has been the one that's over the last decade plus been against gerrymandering, that we saw past that and said, oh, you're trying to pull a fast one on us and we're going to make it backfire on you. It just feels way more organized and way more decisive than how the Democrats generally react to things on a national basis.
Yeah, and in case the sort of skeptics are listening, when you say they've been against gerrymandering, you mean that we've been trying to pass legislation to ban partisan gerrymandering. Right. Our Supreme Court justices tend to vote, saying that the partisan gerrymandering has become unconstitutional. It's always the right-wing judges who uphold the partisan gerrymandering. It's the Republican legislators, especially in the House and Senate, who've blocked any national legislation banning partisan gerrymandering. Obviously, in past cycles, there are plenty of Democratic states that have done on-cycle partisan gerrymandering. We've been slightly more likely to support commissions in all of that, but it's been muddy. But the big picture is we want to solve this structurally, right? That's where we are now. We have two positions. One is this is bad in the aggregate for our country, that we're going back and forth like this, and that the politicians are picking the voters and not the other way around. But until and unless the Republicans get to the table and support structural change, we're not going to handcuff ourselves. And, there have been some interesting reactions from across the right. Here are just two of them. Eric Erickson, this is what he tweeted: just so you get the truth and not the partisan spin here, Republicans came up with the idea of the mid-decade redistricting fight and started in Texas. Then in Virginia, the RNC spent $0 to fight. Now, as drawn, the Democrats have an advantage from the redistricting fight. Gerard Baker, who's from the Wall Street Journal opinion pages, said, this is going to rank as another massive exercise in self-harm by MAGA. Dems now probably net up to 5 nationally on the redistricting started by Trump in Texas. The lesson, it's a huge risk to start a gerrymander war in a year when you're the underdog. I think this is slightly overstated in terms of Democrats, quote unquote, winning. Like when I was looking at the math this morning, it looks like we're probably net 1 as it stands right now, but we still have activity going on in some states like Florida that could tip it slightly in favor of the Republicans or to a draw. But it certainly is not the huge win that Republicans thought it would be.
Yeah. I mean, you got to wait to see what actually happens with Missouri, because as of right now, it looks like it would be the gerrymandered districts that they would use, which would take 1 Democratic seat away. But there's still a court case on. I don't need to get into all the back and forth. It's pretty nuanced, but I think there's a real chance that it's not going to be the new gerrymandered districts, that it's going to be the old gerrymandered districts, because they're all gerrymandered, but that would still retain a Democratic seat here in Kansas City. So, but to me, the big point of all of it is, when you think about the way people portray the Democratic Party's general reaction to things, particularly in the Trump era, it's this feeling so precious about norms that we're going into a gunfight holding, like a fork. That's how people portray us. And that's clearly not what happened here. Folks, you got to give people like Gavin Newsom credit that he kind of started this, in the response to Texas. And that became the default position of the Democrats nationwide, that like, we're not going to be so precious about our norms and the way we have regarded partisan gerrymandering. We're going to recognize that we are in a moment that is an existential threat to democracy. And we're, like Lincoln suspended habeas corpus during the Civil War. Like, Democrats can say like, hey, we still oppose partisan gerrymandering, but we know what kind of moment we're in, and we've got to go ahead and go try to win this fight. And they did it. And nobody is saying in the conversation about this, wow, the Democrats really got into a fight and won it.
Yeah.
Doesn't fit the narrative.
I have these arguments with people all the time, where, sort of people who are loyal Democrats, there's always frustration, always like the Democrats are weak. Democrats don't have a message, all this kind of stuff. And you and I have actually said some version of those things all the time. Like, it's not like we're diametrically opposed to those views at times. But I agree with you that people don't really stop when we do have these great moments and say, oh yeah, great job. And this was the seminal fight of the entire midterms. And I think there are things that divide us as a party, like who's going to be our nominee in Maine and Michigan and all that kind of stuff. And those are really important fights. And I'm sure they're going to heat up between now and August, and we'll have some tough conversations within the party, maybe even on this podcast. But this is more important than any of that kind of stuff, because if we didn't do the things that we talked about here, we would have already lost up to 10 plus seats if we didn't do this. So this is an area where we all agree on, whether you're the establishment or you're super lefty podcaster or you're Bill Kristol, all these people must do, Barack Obama, everybody's in agreement that this was the right thing to do, and we did it. And so I think it's important to just stop here and be like, this is an important area where we're unified, organized, and ruthless. Yes, we're going to have, critical and divisive questions about the direction of the party over the next few months, and that is necessary. That is important. It's par for the course. But this was a critical win and a critical area of organization and discipline early on.
It's also, to go back to Spanberger's point, because ultimately the mission of this show is to equip people with the ability to have these conversations in real life. It is notable that in this squabble or skirmish or whatever you want to call it over gerrymandering, that when the Republicans have done it, and maybe there's an exception to this that I'm forgetting, but when the Republicans have done it, they've done it without the people being involved. And the Democrats did do this, at least in California and Virginia, with the people being involved. When I think, obviously in the Texas case, the state legislature, which is controlled by Republicans, just did it. Here in Missouri, the state legislature controlled by Republicans or the Republican governor just did it. And at no point have invited the people in on this. In fact, the big fight in Missouri now is that we have a citizen veto, which is a very cool thing in the Missouri Constitution, where the law that was passed changing the districts is going to be on the ballot, but it's only going to be on the ballot because Democrats are forcing it onto the ballot. Republicans didn't want the people to vote on this, which goes to the point made by what's his name at the Wall Street Journal, that
Gerard Baker, that if you want to pick a fight like this because you're desperate and you're on a track to lose, you better be careful, because if you do it in a year when you are destined to lose, people may not want to let you get away with it. And that is what allowed, in California and in Virginia, it's what allowed them to put it to a vote of the people, because I think voters understood what was happening. And it wasn't just like, clearly what Trump and the folks who were the architects of this on the right thought was that we would be so beholden to our principles about nonpartisan gerrymandering that we would never do this. And that furthermore, we would be so beholden to our principles about voting on this kind of thing that we'd be screwed either way, because the people would never vote for partisan gerrymandering in a place like California or Virginia. But they did, because the people were a lot savvier to what was going on in the rest of the country and just took it as an up or down vote on Trump. And, this was a bad year for Trump to have this be an up or down vote on Trump. Well, yeah, and there's, I think, litigation over my home district in Staten Island, which could net us one. It's not looking great, but there's a court case that could bring that district into a lean blue. So keep an eye on it. And there was a candidate who dropped out of the race. It's kind of weird and kind of chaotic, but that could happen. But either way, it's not like a worst case scenario. We significantly mitigated the damage that the Republicans would have posed from their push. Best case scenario, we net a little bit off of this, but we did what we could. I mean, there are a couple states, I'm looking at you, Maryland, that could have done a lot more, but for the most part, we did what we needed to do. So this is a narrative violation, and we should remember that.
Well, Maryland, before you move on, Maryland's a good example of exactly what we were just talking about, right? Because I believe it was one Democratic state senator who opposed the idea of partisan gerrymandering, which is what kept it from moving forward. And so that's what the Republicans thought this would look like for Democrats all over the country. And it just wasn't. And that was a huge miscalculation on their part.
Well, Jason, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk Iran. We're going to talk the economy. We're going to talk Kash Patel and his alleged substance abuse issue. All that and more when we come back.
With an Aura frame, you can capture and relive mom's magic every day. Think about that one photo of your mom or your partner that always makes you stop and smile. Maybe it's a candid shot from a family dinner or a quick photo you took when they weren't looking. Usually those shots just sit in your phone's cloud, buried under thousands of other files. But with an Aura frame, you can capture and relive mom's magic every day. It's about taking those memories out of your head and putting them right where you can see them. It's often the little everyday routines that end up meaning the most. The way she handles the morning rush or those quiet Sunday afternoons. Aura helps keep those specific moments alive. I found that being able to share your photos and videos effortlessly is a game changer. You just download the free Aura app and send photos straight to the frame from anywhere in the world. It's no wonder they were the top-rated app that reached #1 in the App Store on Christmas Day in 2025. Aura makes gifting incredibly simple. You can even preload photos before the frame ships and add a personalized message so it's ready to go the second she plugs it in. Plus, it comes in a premium gift box with no price tag, so the presentation is already handled for you. Named #1 by Wirecutter, you can save on the gifts moms love by visiting auraframes.com. For a limited time, listeners listeners can get $25 off their best-selling Carver mat frame with code MAJORITY54. That's AURA frames.com, promo code MAJORITY54. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Put away the heavy layers. It's time for breathable, durable clothes that move with you and can keep up with anything you put on your spring calendar. Mack Weldon has updated closet staples like stretch twill chinos that go with everything and button-ups that keep you looking sharp from morning coffee to dinner date. Discover upgraded basics, fresh styles, and more at MackWeldon.com. Plus, get 20% off your first order of $125 or more with code MAJORITY. The Ace Collection by Mack Weldon is perfect for staying comfy and looking good. The fit is super comfortable and a confidence boost knowing you look good without even trying. Mack Weldon is my go-to. Add comfort and flair to your closet this year. Mack Weldon balances classic pieces with updated details to keep you looking sharp. Not flashy, just classic, always in style, and made from the world's most comfortable performance materials. Easy to style and versatile looks that you don't have to think about. Mack Weldon is effortless by design. With the Ace line, ease and self-assurance have never been more comfortable. Crazy comfortable, but elevated sweatpants, shorts, sweatshirts, and even blazers if you're lucky enough to grab one while they're in stock. All new relaxed sweatpants, carpenter sweatpants, and classic sweatpants available in 5 new colors. Mack Weldon is the go-to choice for guys who want to look great without even trying. Mack Weldon clothes are designed to fit your style and the demands of modern life. Get moving with Mack Weldon, comfortable anywhere. Go to MackWeldon.com and get 20% off your first order of $125 or more with promo code MAJORITY. That's MackWeldon.com, code MAJORITY.
Jason, I got to be honest, I don't really have a firm grasp on what the heck is going on with Iran right now. Like I've been, this is the second podcast I've done today, and I was putting together a summary earlier today and read like 100 articles. And after reading 100 articles on Iran, I'm still left confused, but I'll give you a couple of headlines here. One is, I think everybody knows this by now, that Trump extended the ceasefire with Iran. And I want to emphasize, I'm going to put ceasefire in quotes because I'm not exactly sure what that means in this context anymore. And he cited a fractured Iran leadership. And then as we're talking, then this has been playing out all morning. Iran fired on 3 ships in the Strait of Hormuz and escorted 2 to its coast. The U.S. commandeered 1 ship that was like in the Indian Ocean, that had some kind of ties to Iran. The U.S. announced that since the start of this whole thing, 400 U.S. service members have been injured, with the vast majority in your branch of the Army, and the death toll is at 13. And what is a ceasefire here? Like, so we're commandeering ships, they're commandeering ships, they're shooting on vessels, but we're somehow in a ceasefire.
Yeah, I think it just means we're not dropping bombs or firing missiles or drones, and neither are they, which is a big ass deal. By the way, the reason that the vast majority of the injuries have been to soldiers and not to airmen or sailors, despite the fact that this has largely been an air war and a naval war, is because those are simply the people who were stationed in and around the Middle East already. And I mean, it's literally just they were there already. So I think that's important for people to recognize that, like, the soldiers who are injured in this war, yes, I'm sure that they are engaged in supply and rear operations in the war. But for the most part, it's for them. From what I can tell, most of them were not deployed to fight in the war with Iran. They were just deployed to the Middle East as per usual business. And then a war broke out and they just became targets. And that's just one of many things about this war that makes such little sense. Look, it's almost like it's like the boarding of the ships and the blockade is really just a competition for leverage right now, because both sides are trying to maximize their leverage. Trump does have some leverage. We sort of think of him as having none in this because the strait, understandably, because the strait was open before the war and anybody could go through it. And that's not the case now. But he does have some leverage because of the blockade, because and this is, you may have read more about it recently than me, Ravi, but this is my understanding of it, is that because there's going to become a point at which if Iran cannot get through that blockade, they're going to have to start using their domestic supply. They're going to have to, they're going to start eating into real profits, and it's basically into savings. And that's probably 3 or 4 weeks away. So while Trump has leverage, and I guess I would say the United States has leverage, but I don't think any of us feel like, you know, we're in this, or like our hearts are in this at all. They're not. It's predicated on being able to stay at this for months. And I just don't see that happening because people are so opposed to this.
Yeah, and there's very little to be gleaned from Trump's public statements. I think it's like, you know, I don't want to do the whole thing that we do every week, which is here's Trump saying one thing and doing another thing. But it is notable how erratic his statements are. So, a couple days before he announced the fractured Iran leadership, extending the ceasefire, he did an interview with MSNBC where he said, quote, "I just looked at a little chart. World War I, 4 years, 3 months. World War II, 6 years. Korean War, 3 years. Vietnam, 19 years. Iraq, 8 years. I want to make a good deal. I'm not going to be rushed. I have all the time in the world." And then he said they shouldn't be saying that when we're in the midst of a negotiation because it does hurt us somewhat, when he was saying that Congress was unwilling to undercut his negotiating stance. He says it gives the other side hope. I don't want to give them hope. He says, I expect to be bombing because I think it's a better attitude to go with. And there's other reporting going on. First of all, when he says he looked at charts, it is unquestionably some tweet or truth or whatever we call it.
Can I also say, like, he looked at a chart that was clearly the length of those wars in total, but not the length of the United States involvement in those wars. Like, the United States was in World War II from 1941 to 1945. That's not 6 years, right? We were in Vietnam, you could really say from like 63 to 72. That's not 19 years. Like, yeah, my point is just like the dude doesn't even know history that he lived through.
Right. Well, it's so like, wait, if you're reading this, you're like, well, what is your mental state? And obviously the world is wondering the same, because this is going to be the irony of this whole thing is as inconvenient and terrible as this is politically for Trump and as horrible it is for service members' families and the cost of life, it is way more costly for the rest of the world. And, Scott Bessent is in talks to bail out the UAE, which would be crazy, by the way. You've got all this reporting, and this is what I spent a big chunk of the morning on, which is just the global supply chain and all of these countries that the U.S. doesn't give a shit about, unfortunately, but I give a shit about. Countries like India, Bangladesh, smaller developing countries, African countries that don't have strong domestic supplies of petroleum or other goods like fertilizers. You and I could talk for hours about just fertilizer and how we're in planting season in a lot of important countries around the world who are not able to plant the crops that they need to. And that for small family farms or subsistence farms where you're just growing what you eat, we're going to have a starvation crisis, and the World Food Program has said as much. And I think that even if they had just completely opened back up the flow of goods through the Strait today or a week ago, you would have had major problems down the line the next few months. But given the fact that it's still murky, and that we're still having major issues of flow at the Strait of Hormuz, and that you're having a lot of countries starting to hold back exports of critical goods like fertilizer and petroleum, that, yeah, maybe the U.S. is in a better shape, still bad politically for Trump because there'll be a lot of inflation, but there's going to be a lot of problems around the world. And I think we're going to start to see starvation. We're going to start to see conflicts. We're going to see civil wars that result from this.
And put yourself in the shoes of a regular citizen in pretty much any country around the world, and try and take yourself out of the fact that you are an American. Like, imagine for a moment you're not an American and you're watching what has happened here, the catastrophe and the chaos that has resulted from the strait being closed, from all the other things you described. How would you not be angry at the United States and resentful of the United States for years? And look, I wish that the way it worked is that other people around the world could look at the United States and see, oh, it's Trump, it's not the United States, because that's obviously how we see it. We understand that the vast majority of Americans did not want this war. The vast majority of Americans, including a lot of Republicans, think that this is really stupid. But the rest of the world doesn't understand that, nor should they bother to care, right? I mean, like that'd be a lot to ask of the rest of the world. And what that means is like we're gonna elect a new president in 2028, and hopefully it's gonna be, not somebody from Trump's party. Hopefully it's gonna be a Democrat. But it's still going to take them a long time to regain the trust of the rest of the world, because they have to convince them of two things. The first thing is easier than the second. The first thing is, I'm not Donald Trump and you can trust me. They're going to come around to that. It won't take too long, right? They're going to worry, well, but the politics of America is still the politics of America, and you might be forced into doing some of the same things as Trump. But then the other thing they have to convince them of is, and another Trump is not coming along after me anytime soon. And that's going to be really hard to do, to get the rest of the world to trust that we've changed. I mean, like we're coming, we'll be coming into this, back to this relationship that we were in where we were, violent and belligerent. And now we're going to be saying, hey, we've turned over a new leaf. And it's going to be a long period of ingratiating ourselves to the rest of the world to get them to trust us again.
Yeah, and I think that the message is going to have to be pretty modest. It's going to have to be, hey, I can't promise you the world. I can only put one foot in front of the other, so let's do that. Like, I'm not going to be like, hey, like, this is a new era, like all this kind of stuff that Biden was saying, understandably, because we thought we had all this behind us. It's got to be like, hey, let's cut one good deal. We can, like, let's start sharing intelligence again. You can have an off switch. Like, I'm not trying to sell you on, any hopium here. Let's just be prudent and do it little by little.
It's a great point, because when Biden came into office, the way he talked sounded a lot like the way Obama talked when he came into office, because Obama had come in at a time where, and in retrospect, in hindsight, it's quaint by comparison to what the next Democratic president will be faced with. But, Obama came in, and Bush had hurt a lot of relationships because he had ultimately, after having a coalition of the willing, and a lot of people, weren't in it in the beginning, and then eventually phased out of it, he kind of, went it alone with regard to Iraq. And even in the way that he didn't, that coalition of the willing was built with what turned out to be false intelligence, right? Like, it turned out to be lies. And so there was a lot of repair to be done. And Obama did what, you may remember, listeners, you may remember that the Republicans referred to it as his apology tour. But that wasn't, I mean, it was named that as a knock on him, but it was a goodwill tour to try and say, like, hey, things are going to be different. And Biden tried to run the same plan, but the problem was what Trump had done was so much more severe. And now what Trump has done in the second Trump administration is you can't even see the first Trump administration in the rear view. This is so far out in front in terms of alienating the rest of the world. And so, yeah, I totally agree with you. We're going to have to approach it with humility in order to have any credibility.
Yeah, well, one more item on this war is that the Wall Street Journal had some good reporting about how there's a proxy war going on where Iranian-backed militia groups in Iraq, remember that war, are launching drones into Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and other Gulf countries and damaging oil infrastructure. So just keep an eye on that. Like, this is just a huge mess. And this is quote unquote ceasefire. We still have a lot going on here under the surface. And Trump is paying the price politically right now, at least in terms of his support. His approval rating on the economy, which is obviously linked into this war inextricably, dropped to 30% in April from 38% in March. This is according to the AP. 32% approve of his leadership in Iran. And Bloomberg had a poll. Bloomberg had a report. What's driving this is, costs are starting to go up. People are seeing this, but a colorful little tidbit here is that the world's top condom maker is raising prices by 20 to 30%. They say possibly more because these are petroleum products. We don't think of that. So this is where we're heading here.
Plastic, rubber, yeah. Yes. Here's my prediction as to what's going to happen here. Trump is clearly like kind of over this. Like I think in a sick way, he was enjoying it for the first few weeks. And now he sees it as like the albatross politically around his neck that it is. And he's listening to everybody talk about how he's losing and he's not enjoying it. And they keep trying to start and restart these talks with Iran. My prediction is that what's going to happen is there's not going to be an announcement of, we talked with the government of Iran and here are the terms that both sides have agreed to. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think that this ceasefire is going to just remain in place.
Like the tariffs.
Like the tariffs. That's just going to remain in place. And at some point he'll say things like, oh, the war's over, but there won't actually be like a peace agreement of any kind, which means we are going to technically, at least for the remainder of the Trump administration, if not longer, still be technically in a war with Iran, not unlike the way the Korean War never really ended. Right. So, and which has obviously greatly affected North Korea's relationship with the rest of the world for 50 plus years as a result. Right. And so here's another, bag of crap that's going to be handed to the next administration is that I think Trump is so ready to just move on from this that he's going to just, we're in a ceasefire and then just start, it's infrastructure week and just go to other things. And maybe the Strait of Hormuz gets opened again, like it was, before the war. Or maybe it's like it is now where there's a blockade, but a lot of American ships are able to get through. I think it's just going to end with a whimper. I don't think it's going to end with some big announcement. And that means that the next president is going to enter into a situation where we're technically still at war with Iran. And which by the way, when you're technically still at war with the country, what that means militarily is you have to commit a certain amount of assets to that region all the time. Look at how many American troops are still in Korea all the time. And so I think that is a big consideration here.
Yeah, it'll be like the tariffs where every couple of weeks something changes about Trump's approach, and that the big consequence of all of that is that we have more uncertainty in the global economy. So you put the tariffs plus this, and we're going to get to a point where global companies and supply chains just cannot operate because am I going to send a ship through the strait or I'm not going to send a ship through the strait? Well, and more than that, here's a political point about this. Now is not the time to do this because we actually do want him to calm down, Trump. But at a certain point, pretty soon, we need to start saying what's really going on here, which is we lost a war. Trump lost a war. And, Mr. America First, Mr. Tough Guy, Americans hate losing wars. And I think we need to say it out loud in this midterm. Hey, you guys lost us a war. When was the last time that happened? And then the next president in the next presidential race needs to look over to J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, or whoever, and say, you lost us a war. So not only did you tank the economy for your war, but we lost that war. So, and Trump's going to hate that. Vance is going to hate that. But the people who are going to hate it the most are Americans because Americans don't like to lose. Right. And I actually think that this will coincide with the Olympics and the World Cup, by the way. And I think this is perfect messaging when he's like, America, this and other, with athletes who resent him, by the way, except for the hockey team. You're going to have, him on the stage with a bunch of embarrassing our country. And I think Democrats should just be right out there and be like, great, I root for America. Obviously I'm proud of, the American basketball team for winning again or whatever. But what really saddens me, is where there are life or death stakes. This guy lost us a war, and that's embarrassing.
Well, and I think it's you have to always couple it with this guy lost a war we should have never been in the first place. right? I mean, because you want to make it clear that right, that like we never should have been in this thing. But you're right, like because you're right that's how Trump wants to portray this. He wants it to be like, okay, yes, I'm in a war that none of you wanted, but we're America and we're winning it, which is why every press conference by him or Hegseth is about how devastating American air power is and how we're blowing up everything. And it's why he's saying that the Iranian government is completely fractured. Sadly, I don't think they are. I think it's an excuse for why there's no peace deal.
Well, on the economy, Trump's Fed pick, this guy, Kevin Warsh, appeared before Congress, and Elizabeth Warren had an interesting exchange with this guy.
I'll take that as a no as well.
I would be redeeming my assets
Donald
before
Trump
I take
has
office.
made clear that he does not want an independent Fed. In fact, he has said, and I quote, "Anybody that disagrees with me will never be Fed chairman." And he's made clear that you are his sock puppets, saying last week that interest rates will drop, quote, "when Kevin gets in." Yeah, I think they do. Not when economic conditions change, we'll get lower rates. Not when the economy needs it. Nope. He said, when my guy, Kevin Warsh, is in there, we'll get the interest rates that Donald Trump, wants. So independence takes courage. Let's check out your independence and your courage. We'll start easy. Mr. Warsh, did Donald Trump lose the 2020 election?
We try to keep politics, if I'm confirmed, out of the federal.
I'm just asking a factual question. I need to know, I need to measure your independence and your courage.
Senator, I believe that this body certified that election many years ago.
That's not the question I'm asking. I'm asking, did Donald Trump lose in 2020?
And I'm suggesting you in 2020, the Fed made a huge inflation problem, and you certified the election.
So let me ask you another question.
Out of monetary policy.
In our meeting,
I mean, this is the litmus test now. You either need to say the election was stolen to get any job that is in any way in the vicinity of election administration, DOJ, FBI, intelligence, I guess, Tulsi Gabbard. You need to say the election was stolen. The best you can hope for, if you're somebody who believes in truth, is what we just saw, which is he won't say it was stolen, but he won't say Biden won. And obviously there was, Warren picked up on this, obviously, this like, you certified the election. You'd be like, people went to the polls and pulled levers in 2020. It's like, okay, yeah, that's not what we're asking. But he did another thing. This is what the Cash Patel bondification of these things has done, is that he has to slip in like a totally disrespectful non sequitur about inflation. Mm-hmm. It's just like these people don't respect the U.S. Congress
while
anymore.
Claiming to be completely non-political.
Right.
Making clearly a political argument as to why the election turned out the way it did. One, Elizabeth Warren is still just the best. I mean, the whole way that she set that up, the preface of this is what he says. So let's test you. First question, he's like dead air, But also, this right here is a big part of why so many Republican members of Congress and probably several members of the Senate are going to lose re-election, is because of the credibility gap and having to constantly pretend that the emperor is fully dressed, because that really hurt us during a good stretch of 2024 when you had so many elected Democrats running for re-election or people running for office pretending that Biden seemed completely fine. We don't notice anything. He doesn't seem like age is getting to him at all. And people were like, okay, so now you seem so out of touch with reality. I don't even know if I can consider the other things you say. And now that's where they are on like everything Trump on, heck, forget whether he won the election, just whether it's a good idea to go to war with Iran when everybody knows it's not, and they have to pretend that it is. Whether the economy is going well, whether things are affordable, whether the ICE raids actually were about protecting Americans versus just vindictive and mean and cruel. It's just a huge credibility gap. And you can see that so many of these people don't believe what they're saying. And I actually think that that's worse for a politician, is when a voter looks at what you're saying and says, I don't agree with what you're saying, and I so don't agree that it bothers me what you're saying, that's actually better than I don't agree with what you're saying, but I don't even believe that you believe it. Like that's the worst.
Well, they're also the least likely to come to Jesus too. Like, you know, the woman at the pump who's like, I'm an idiot for supporting Trump or whatever. Like the people who are the true believers, you know, like, and I actually don't know whether this is true of Alex Jones, but let's pretend like Alex Jones is like, he's sincere when he's upset about like Trump being who he is or whatever, and starts crying or whatever about how wrong he was about Trump or whatever. And again, I have no idea where this is here. I'm not an avid Alex Jones watcher, but it's actually the people who are a little loony, who are like, I believe all this shit, who actually are more likely to flip back, because if it was sincerely held, then you can sincerely break from Trump. Whereas if you're totally cynical, like JD Vance, you'll never break as long as your career is attached to Donald Trump.
This is how real actual Americans think and talk. And I actually, in my first book, I had a whole analogy about this where I said politicians treat this completely different than the way regular voters do. So like if you find like, you know, I don't know how it is in other parts of the country, but in Missouri, if you go into a small town, there's two places where like old men in that small town convene every morning. All right. One is like a diner that's been there forever. And the other, for whatever reason, is the McDonald's. If you go into a McDonald's in a small Missouri town, there are two tables of older men who have lived in that town their whole life. And they're just sitting, and they do this every morning. It's how they start their day, and they're having coffee and they're talking. And those conversations are interesting to listen to, because most of those old men in that small town in Missouri are Republican, but there's usually, you know, one or two that aren't. And it's not like, you know, Gary, you got to leave, right? Or even like if one of them's a Republican and they express something that is not in tune with the party, nobody's like, how dare you? You're not a real Republican anymore. It's only politicians who do that. And the analogy that I drew is like, in Royals country, because of years of rivalry and just being beaten by them all the time, like we hate the Yankees, right? But Royals fans can sit around and one Royals fan can say to the other, but man, Aaron Judge, amazing, right? And the Royals, nobody's going to be like, how dare you praise?
Yeah, you and I as Chiefs and Bills fans, Tom Brady, like none of us are going to dispute how great Tom Brady was.
Exactly. Right? And the point here is that while politicians and political hobbyists, many of whom listen to this podcast, by the way, like if you're a person who you define your entire personality based on your politics, you count as a political hobbyist in a lot of ways, right? Those people tend to be absolute purists and will alienate anybody who expresses a different view. But that's not how regular Americans work at all. So then when you stick to the party line, despite the fact that the party line is bonkers and makes no sense, you don't just seem unreasonable, you lack all credibility.
Right.
And nothing you say can be believed. And that's a trap that Democrats and Republicans run into.
Yeah. And, you know, I live this acutely. You know, I think like I'm always trying to get on this podcast, and you and I committed to this after the election to do it as much as we possibly can, is like to try to extricate myself from the quote unquote conversation and be like, even if this thing I'm saying is, I know people are going to hate it, it's just to say it anyway, because I don't know who the quote unquote people are anymore. You know, like I think getting on a microphone and looking into a camera to an audience is always distorting, because you can always confuse yourself into thinking that you into some kind of audience capture, or not even understanding what the audience believes themselves. And I think the end of the day, our job isn't to channel the audience's point of view, because everybody's constantly shifting. It's complicated. It's just to be like, hey, like what actually is happening? And it's a lot harder to do than I ever would have thought in the beginning. But we have a guest, Jason. Before we get there, I do want to give you an opportunity to talk about something that I know you're going to have an opinion about, which is there's a report out there that Trump is considering sending Afghans who aided us in that conflict to the Congo.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of people have seen this and asked me about it. Here's what it is. There's about 1,100 Afghans who aided the United States, and at the end of the Biden administration had been granted permission to come to the United States. And the way that worked, when it worked directly through the State Department and through this office called CARE that's been disbanded since within the State Department, is that many times they would go through Doha in Qatar, right? There's a U.S. air base there. And what happened was there was about 1,100 of these folks, and they were in the final process of like resettling in the United States, and they were in Doha. And then Trump came in, and Trump ended the U.S. refugee program and froze them in place. And so for the past 15 months, roughly, these people have been in what is essentially a refugee camp in Doha, Qatar, obviously unable to go back to Afghanistan because they were fleeing Afghanistan, because if they return, they'll be in great danger, and waiting for the Trump administration to decide what to do with them. Or a lot of people, I think, assume that they were just going to end up staying in this refugee camp until we have a new president in a few years and then be resettled. But now what the Trump administration is saying, and this appears to be a really disgusting trial balloon, is that they are in talks, which means they are in proxy talks through the Qataris with the Taliban to give these people a choice between returning to a Taliban-controlled Afghanistan, which they were fleeing for good reason, or to the Congo, which already has a refugee crisis with 600,000 refugees that they cannot actually sustain. So it is a totally morally depraved thing to do, and just makes me really sad.
I mean, this is embarrassing. It's horrendous. And I worked on the Congo stuff when I was in at the UN, and I recently interviewed a guy who wrote a really good book about the exploitation of workers there in the mines. And essentially what's going to happen is these refugees, if they show up in the Congo, are going to wind up, best case scenario, being sent to like mine cobalt or something in these horrendous conditions. And at worse, they themselves become a preyed upon minority in a new country, like the way that South Asians were under Idi Amin in Uganda. Like these are not hospitable conditions. And as you mentioned, there's a huge, ongoing series of conflicts involving the Congo. And whenever you have a country in crisis that's corrupt and that already has ethnic and sectarian strife, adding a new ethnicity that has no connection whatsoever to this country,
no language,
is not. And then you throw into it all, Jason, all the stuff we were just talking about, which is the coming global commodities crisis and energy crisis. I mean, not good.
No, it's a truly evil thing to do.
Well,
with that.
Yeah. Well, I'll mention there's one story we were planning to talk about, but I don't know if we have new ground, which is all the stuff about Kash Patel and his drinking and all that, and the labor secretary and her resigning. I mean, I'd listened to enough podcasts to know that, listeners, you got plenty of places to go where people could talk about it. Obviously, it's embarrassing and dangerous to have an FBI director who allegedly has a problem with alcohol. But I don't have anything interesting to say about it other than that.
Look, if the story is true that they had to like break down his door to wake him up, I mean, I don't care what your job is. Like, that ain't good. Like, no. If you're a retail manager, you get fired for that. Like if you're a sanitation worker, you get fired for that.
Yeah.
Let alone if you're the head of the FBI. So, all right. We're going to bring in Dr. Adam Hamawy.
Well, I think we have a break first, right, Jason?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, we do. We got to do a break, and then we'll go to Adam.
Yeah, so we'll have a break, and then we'll come back, and we'll hear from Adam. ED is way more common than most guys think. Millions of guys deal with it at some point, and that's exactly why HIMSS offers a straightforward way to handle it. HIMSS connects you with a licensed healthcare provider online, giving you simple access to legitimate ED treatment options from home, no awkward appointments, no pharmacy lines. Just complete a simple online intake, and a provider will review your information to determine if treatment is right for you. And if subscribed or prescribed, your treatment ships directly to your door in discreet packaging. And that includes sildenafil, also known as the generic for Viagra, and it's available through Hims at 95% less than the brand name version. And if that option isn't right for you, there are additional treatment options available so that you can find what works best for your body. And it's straightforward, transparent, and designed to make getting care feel easy. To get simple online access to personalized affordable care for ED, weight loss, and more, visit hims.com/majority. That's hims.com/majority for your free online visit. hims.com/majority. Prescription required. See website for details and important safety information. Sildenafil is the generic version of Viagra. Viagra is a registered trademark for Viatris Specialty LLC. Hims is not affiliated with or endorsed with Viatris.
There is a lot happening right now, and most of it is loud, historically loud, and not in a good way, which is exactly why people are becoming more intentional about how they unwind. IndaCloud is designed to help. IndaCloud is a fully legal online cannabis dispensary for gummies, exotic flower, premium pre-rolls, and zero sugar THC sodas. Calming gummies for everyday decompression, THC sodas for unwinding without alcohol fatigue, premium pre-rolls for evening resets. Everything is federally legal, hemp, THC, lab tested, and shipped discreetly to your door. And with the recently celebrated 420 holiday, new customers get 40% off all month long with IndaCloud's biggest sale of the year. If you're 21 or older and a new customer, go to indacloud.co. That's .co, not .com, and use code MAJORITY for 40% off your first order. That's indacloud.co, code MAJORITY, for 40% off all month long, shipped discreetly to your door, plus free shipping on orders over $50 and $30 and free gifts on qualifying orders. And don't forget to fill out the quick survey when you order to support this show. As always, please enjoy responsibly, and thanks to IndaCloud for supporting a calmer 420. Okay, we're going to bring in Adam Hamawy. Adam is a surgeon. He is a. Are you out of the? You're out of the Army now, right? So you're a former lieutenant colonel. Oh, you're muted, so we don't actually know. But you are in scrubs, so you look like a real doctor, which is, I'm sure not. I'm sure you are actually doctoring. Still can't hear you, so I'm just going to keep talking about you. I'll just make things up. Hopefully you'll come on and fact check me and they'll be true. No, but I spoke to Adam recently on the phone. He actually came to Kansas City for something, and we weren't able to connect, but we ended up talking on the phone. And, you know, I am always interested in candidates for office that are unique in some way or another. And Adam served in Iraq as a surgeon, and he actually was the surgeon who worked on Tammy Duckworth after she was wounded in combat. And I know that Senator Duckworth is excited about his candidacy because when I texted her and said, hey, I'm going to have Adam on my show, and like immediately she was like, that's great news. So she's supported him. And so I think he's an interesting dude. He, in addition to serving in Iraq and I believe in Haiti, he also then went, and he's, I think, going to log back in. So this, if he can't get back on, this will just be the period of the show where we talk about Adam. But I think he's
back. Jason, tell me a little bit about how to do surgery, just generally. Like, just give me,
yeah.
How do you prep?
I've seen a lot of movies from the Old West. I think you need whiskey and a knife. Totally optional whether you wash your hands or the knife. No, but anyway, back. We have Adam back, and he also spent some time in Gaza and had to get his team out. So can we hear you now? Let's see.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
There we go. Okay,
there we go.
Great. So you're in scrubs. Are you doctoring at the moment?
I am doctoring. I had a couple surgeries this morning, and I'm seeing some patients. So this is a routine day during campaigning.
That's amazing. Like, I mean, I'm curious about this. How much time do you even have to campaign?
Well, I am working 2 days a week, and it's really part-time because once I'm done with the day, I'm out, speaking to people, having forums, and doing the usual campaign stuff. But I am operating, on Mondays and Wednesdays. I do take an occasional call, and if you see me run off, it's because there's an emergency happening.
Oh, geez. Are you done with scheduled surgeries for today?
I am done for the day.
Okay, that's good. Because if you were doing surgery on me, I would want to know that you weren't like, I have surgery in an hour, but I have time to be.
I'll be back in a few minutes. Keep the patient asleep, you know.
Yeah, I would not want that. But All right. Well, yeah, I mean, I kind of introduced you and gave your background a bit, but why don't you talk a little bit about why you decided to run and a little bit about where you're running?
Sure. So I'm running in New Jersey. It is NJ12, which is right in the middle part. I jumped in a race a couple months ago after our Congresswoman said she was going to retire. I grew up in this district. I joined the Army to help pay for college like many other people, and ended up as a combat trauma surgeon in Iraq in 2004 and 5. So after being deployed in Iraq for 8 months, I continued serving for another 8 years of active duty before eventually leaving and coming back and opening up practice and serving my community. The other thing I've been doing is volunteering for really the last 30 years to war zones and disaster zones around the world. So I've been to Central America, Africa, throughout the Middle East, and in the last 2 years, I've been to Gaza and the West Bank twice. And I was there to witness really something that I had not experienced throughout my entire career. So I've been to war. I know what it's like. I was in Iraq. So it's always horrible. But what I witnessed in Gaza was beyond that. It truly was, what I would describe as a genocide. And I felt it wasn't enough just to treat people and come back home. I had to talk about it. So I started going to Congress, talking to our representatives, been there about 20 times over the last couple of years, knocking on doors. And what I found is some listened and heard the story and were supportive. Very few of them. Some listened and said, it sounds like really horrible, but I can't say or do anything because that would be like political suicide. And then there was some that wouldn't even listen to what I have to say. They didn't even want to hear or have a discussion. Even if they disagreed, their doors were closed. So I am jumping in the race because I see the problems we have here every day. I work and I fight with insurance companies just to get my patients the treatment they need. Premiums are going up every year. People now have to decide between their rent and their insurance. And we're told that we don't have enough money to be able to fix our healthcare system. We don't have enough money for Medicare for all, but we always have enough money for bombs. And I've seen it. I've seen it bombs in Iraq. I've seen bombs in Gaza. And now we have bombs dropping on Iran. So, there's clearly a problem with the choices that we're making as a country. And so I'm fighting for healthcare, not bombs. I'm fighting to abolish ICE because I see what it's doing to our communities. It's not making us any safer. And we're spending $170 billion over there as well, where we could spend it in our communities, and to unrig this economy that's not working for regular people who are doing everything right, but really working for the billionaires on top.
Healthcare, not bombs is a pretty solid campaign slogan for an Army doctor, I feel like. I mean, I'm not just trying to trivialize it. I'm just saying it makes it pretty simple.
It's straightforward. I mean, we all know that we have money. We are the richest country in the history of the world. We're spending $1 trillion on defense just during peacetime. And, Trump wants to make it $1.5 trillion. So the money is sloshing out there. Just this last month, we've spent close to $40 or $50 billion at least on the war in Iran. Think of what that could have done to our communities, what that could have done to fix healthcare, to help with education, to fix our infrastructure and build a high-speed rail system like the rest of the world. We have things that we need to take care of here at home, but the only ones profiting from these wars are obviously the defense contractors, all these corporations that want us to continue to do this because they are making stealth bombers and making aircraft carriers and really causing misery around the world.
Ravi, go ahead if you had a question.
Oh no, I was just looking at the map of New Jersey 12. My aunt and uncle live over there, and I think you have Old Bridge, right?
I grew up in Old Bridge, so I went from elementary to high school there. My mom still lives there as well as my brother.
Nice, yeah, that's where my aunt and uncle are. My grandma is in Freehold, which I think is just over the border in a different district, but I know the area very well. And, in looking at your district, you've got a lot of traditional suburbs, and I'm curious as to what that world looks like in this economy right now. What are people concerned about? You talked about healthcare, not bombs. Are you starting to pick up any of this inflation in the everyday conversations you're having with people? And at a concrete level, like, what are people mentioning, like, when they talk about the cost of living?
Well, housing in New Jersey has always been high, but add to it, like, everyone around the country is talking about gas prices, right? We've seen it jump from under $3 a gallon now to way over, like, getting close to $5 a gallon. So that's hitting everyone every single day in their pocketbook. And in addition to that, when I talk about healthcare is an affordability issue. We all have to deal with it at some point of time. And it's usually on the worst day of your life when you show up with an injury or you find out that you have some chronic disease. And I'm told everyone, oh, I have great insurance. Okay, that's if they have insurance. And then all of a sudden they find out it's not that great because they have this huge deductible that they have to pay out of their pocket before the insurance even kicks in. And then we have to fight to actually get, like, whatever they need approved. I mean, even medications, I get called by the pharmacies like it's not on the patient's insurance plan. So, affordability is that people are still paying out of their pocket despite having insurance. And needless to say, those who don't have anything at all, they sometimes avoid getting care because they can't afford it. And this should be really a human right. But education, I have kids in college. Everyone tries to, send their kids to get the best education they can. And I remember growing up in public schools here, and I am where I am today because of what I learned in public schools, but they're not the same. And it's not because the teachers are any worse. Actually, the teachers are great, but they're working with less. Now we have to send our kids to, like, a Kumon or something in a strip mall to get extra tutoring if you could afford it, to be able to keep up with, the learning that we should be, competitive with in the rest of the world. I mean, we're falling behind on education. Our infrastructure is falling apart. We're falling behind on healthcare, and we're still trying to tell the world and tell ourselves that we're number one. I think we're really number one in having a large military that is bloated because we're, spending more on that than the next 9 countries combined altogether. And we just need to reassess and make sure, why are we spending that way? Who's making the decisions and what's behind those decisions? And it's about money. It's about, corporations and billionaires. It's the same old thing.
Well, I mean, I'm sold. Ravi, if you're out of questions, I'm going to let him promote his stuff.
Go for it.
Adam, when you're not doctoring, where can people find you so they can support the campaign?
You could find me on Hamawy for NJ.com. That's HAMAWY for NJ.com. And you could support by donating. Obviously, it would be a huge help. You could also support by volunteering. You could phone bank anywhere in the country. We have people making calls all the time. We just need to let the voters know what I'm standing for, and that I'm not bought. I'm raising all my money from individuals, no corporate PACs, no APAC, nothing except the people who I'm going to work for. So I appreciate all your support.
Adam, thanks for joining us, man. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
All right. Okay, Ravi, what's new with you, man?
I'm in Arizona for a conference, but I've been in New York for the most part and just getting situated back in the city. And I've been having like this, my mantra has been just say yes to everything because I've been away for so long. So I just am going to all kinds of stuff. Like I've been going to poetry events and people's, friends, 2-year-old's birthday and everything. And so it's like, I'm having a good time. And I realize that I grew up in.
It says a lot that you wouldn't go outlet shopping with me and my family.
Oh, don't even start. Don't even start. First of all, that was before I had that.
Everything, but there's limits.
First of all, that was before I had that mantra. Number 2 is that if I didn't come from you, it came from your wife. Which,
but she was speaking for both.
If you would have called and been like, "Hey, man," it would really mean a lot. It felt like, "Hey, we don't want to be rude."
It didn't mean
not
a lot,
invite you.
So it's fine.
Yeah. It felt like I don't want to be rude, so just you could come along if you want.
It was fine.
But next I'll come next time. I'll buy an Eddie Bauer vest or something.
I didn't buy anything. I just was there.
Well, I'm sorry.
It's totally fine. I didn't mean to cut you off. So you're going to a lot of stuff.
So clearly you're upset at me for not coming to the Alice now. Is that what's going on here?
Easy. It was just you just left yourself wide open.
I'm neurotic, so now I'll think about that.
Well, please don't. because it's
About that
totally
for a
fine. It's just
the-
easy.
No, but so I've been just saying yes to a lot of things, and it's great to be back in New York, and and I've been like just getting ready. I'm moving May 1st back to the Lower East Side, and it's like it's just like such a fun experience, like coming back from like being on the road for no particular reason, to learn to cook and all kinds of random shit. And then I'm writing this book proposal for this new book I'm writing, which would bring me back on the road, not nearly as much as I've been, but for a while. And I actually just sat down with my publisher the other day, and he was like, "Where's the proposal?" I was like, "I'm done, but I'm afraid to hand it to you because it would mean I have to commit to actually work hard again." And he laughed, and he was like, "Just give it to me. It'll be good for you. Get back out there." So just like I have this 2-step going on where I'm like recommitting to New York, but then I'm committing to this crazy new book.
To travel all over the place.
Yeah. So that's
that's funny.
What's happening with you other than like, nursing this grievance against me about
so I had a funny thing happen today, which is this morning I went, so the Kansas City Royals had a huge announcement this morning that because there's been a big thing happening here about where the stadiums are going to go. So
yes, I've been following this, by the way.
Yeah, for context, for people who don't follow everything happening in Kansas City all the time, the Chiefs and the Royals for like 50 years have occupied. They've shared a parking lot. They've been next door neighbors on the east side, like almost out to Independence. So like way east in Kansas City, but not near downtown at all. And both stadiums are kind of getting to the point where they need to do something new. So the Chiefs made a deal with the state of Kansas, so they're just moving to the other side of the metro area. So it's still Kansas City, but it's like a 20. We measure everything in the Midwest in minutes, not in miles. So it's like a 20-minute drive difference. And the Royals have been talking to a lot of different entities where they're going to go. And as has been talked about for decades, ever possibly happening in Kansas City, is that the Royals are going to go back to the urban core, which is actually where they started. Their first few years as a franchise from like 68 to 72 or something were in the urban core. And so now they're going back into the urban core. And so the announcement was this morning.
Wow.
And so they did a press conference with the control owner of the team and with the mayor and the governor. And actually it was announced this morning that they're going, like Hallmark is headquartered in Kansas City, and they are basically taking over the area that is currently Hallmark's headquarters. And then that's going to move to like staying in Kansas City and actually staying like in that block. But so they're taking over that area and they're building a downtown stadium. And I say all this to say that I was invited to go, be in the room at the press conference and everything. So I went down there and I was reminded that though I am one of the more well-known members of the Kansas City community, I don't really go to stuff anymore. I work from home, so I'm mostly either at my house, which is here in Kansas City, or I'm at like my kids' school or at my kids' sporting events, or like, I go and I play baseball, or we'll go to the Royals game occasionally. But like it is actually pretty rare that you see me out at like civic stuff anymore. It doesn't mean I'm not involved. Like we give money. I have lunch with lots of people who are involved, and I sit down with people individually and I give advice or I get involved in this or that, but I don't go to stuff. And obviously there was a time when I was, running for things or holding office where you couldn't swing a dead cat in any direction without hitting me because I was at everything. And so it was kind of funny the way people react to me when I go to something like that, because they're not shocked that I'm in town because they know I live here. But people go, "Hey, you're here. I haven't seen you and where have you been?" And I'm like, well, if you were not at one of these two restaurants for lunch or at, a youth athletics, like a tournament for baseball or soccer or something, then you wouldn't have seen me. And so it is just kind of funny the way people react to me.
Well, you're so good at being in those settings, like when we did the book event in Kansas City and then we did the book event in St. Louis, it always like puts a smile on my face seeing you with people, because you like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, it takes every ounce of energy it takes for me to shake hands and like talk to people, and you just love it. And I think that's such a gift,
Well, I appreciate you saying that. There is a nuance to it. It's very easy for me to do when like I am when I know that everybody at the event came to the event expecting to see me, right? Like,
Yeah.
like those events that you're talking about, it's very easy to just walk around. Hey, how you doing? Hey, because I understand, like, we're all here, and you were expecting to see me, and and all that. So like, maybe it's weak. I don't know. When I'm the center of attention, it's super easy for me. But when I'm showing up and I'm kind of like today, like in the back of the room, and I know most of the people in the room and everything, but nobody really expected me to be there. It is a little more awkward for me then. And also this happens. It's been a few years since I was making it a practice to recognize every face that I had dealt with. So now, it actually causes some anxiety for me because I show up and still most of the people in the room know me and I know them, but I may not remember, I may not right away place their face. And so I just have a lot of anxiety about, I don't want to hurt people's feelings. And so I've gone from back in those days, I didn't like name tags at events because I thought they were lame because I was like, I didn't really, I remembered everybody. And now I'm like, oh man, I hope there's name tags. Because I feel bad when I don't remember folks, So anyway,
well, on the stadium front, that's gonna be awesome. I have to say, like, I associate like Kansas City with like this worst sports day of my life, but when I put that aside, Kansas City, I'm always talking about how cool that city is. Like, I think like I'm always feel like I'm gonna wake up one day and be like, that's gonna be the city. I know it makes certain lists, but it's not quite like. And I'm sure some people in Kansas City like it this way, is like, it's never like the buzzy city. It wouldn't shock me if one day it becomes that, because I feel like it's a really awesome place and totally underrated.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously I agree. It's going to be really cool. It's a real accomplishment because the stadium location is really perfect. And you're going to have the skyline in the background. It's right in the middle of right in the heart of the city, which is how baseball ought to work. I mean, it's 81 days a year. It's a great way to draw people in. But the other really impressive thing about the deal is it's going to be 2/3 privately financed, which is a big deal for something like this. And on top of that, it is not displacing any businesses or residents. So, I mean,
that's huge. I don't know what the number was for our Bills stadium, but I think it was the other way. I mean, I could be making this up, but I think we were very publicly funded, which obviously is a good investment for the New York State taxpayers. Kidding. Somebody sent me a nasty message when I was joking last time about it. Remember we had that fake debate?
Yeah.
Somebody was like, "How dare you?" I was like, "I was obviously kidding." Like that's cool.
Well, this one can be argued to be a very good investment, and without any satire or sarcasm.
Well, here's a promise. I'll make up for that. I'll come to a game with you. I have not been to a baseball game in like 10 years. I will come to a baseball game with you in Kansas City when it opens.
We'll do it. That'll be good. We'll get a brisketacho.
There you go. All right. I think that's all we got.
All right. Thanks. I'll do I get to do it this week, I guess. So you can find me at Jason Kander everywhere. You can find Ravi at Ravi M. Gupta everywhere. Please leave a 5-star review. Thank you to the Midas Mighty. And remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.